The disciples weren't afraid of the storm, they were afraid of the man sleeping through it. And if you've ever cried out to God in the middle of a crisis and heard nothing back, no answer, no rescue, just silence, then this story is for you. Because Mark chapter 4 is not a story about the weather, it's a story about who Jesus is and what his silence actually means. Stay with me, because by the end of this, I want you to see the most famous storm in the Bible in a way you've probably never seen it before. Let's set the scene. Mark 4 verse 35. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." Now here's what you need to know about the Sea of Galilee. It sits roughly 200 meters below sea level, in a basin ringed by steep hills. Cool air rushes down those hillsides, collides with the warm air sitting over the water, and the result is sudden, violent squalls that can turn a calm evening into a life-threatening storm in a matter of minutes. The locals knew this, and here's the detail that should stop you in your tracks. At least 4 of the men in that boat, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, were professional fishermen. This lake was their office. They had worked it their entire lives. They had seen every kind of weather Galilee could throw at them. So when Mark tells us in verse 37 that a great windstorm arose and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling, and these hardened, weathered fishermen are convinced they are about to die, this was no ordinary storm. And where is Jesus? Verse 38. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. Asleep on a cushion. Mark is the shortest, punchiest gospel. He doesn't waste words. And yet he makes sure you know about the cushion. Why? Because Mark wants you to see the contrast. Chaos above deck, perfect peace below it. Waves crashing over the sides, and the Lord of glory sound asleep like a child in his father's house. Now listen to what the disciples say when they wake him, because the original language gives us something English hides. "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" That word perishing is the Greek word apolemetha. We are being destroyed. This is not polite concern, this is an accusation. They are saying in effect, we are dying and you are sleeping. Do you even care? Sit with that for a second, because I guarantee you've prayed that prayer. Maybe not in those words, but in the hospital waiting room, standing over the bank statement, lying awake at 3 a.m. God, do you not care? It is the oldest accusation in the book. And notice, Jesus doesn't rebuke them for waking him. Look what he rebukes instead. Verse 39, and he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Now, in English, that sounds gentle, almost poetic. In the Greek, it is anything but. The word is pephimoso, literally be muzzled. It's the exact same word Jesus uses back in Mark chapter 1, verse 25, when he silences a demon in the synagogue at Capernaum. Jesus speaks to this storm the way you'd speak to a snarling dog, be muzzled. And Mark says, the wind ceased, and there was a great calm, not a gradual dying down, instant, total stillness. Any sailor will tell you that even when a storm stops, the swell keeps rolling for hours. Not here. Wind and wave, silenced in a word. Now, why does that matter so much? Because every Jewish person in that boat had grown up on the Hebrew scriptures, and the scriptures are absolutely clear about who commands the sea. Psalm 107 describes sailors in a storm crying out to the Lord, and it says, "He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed." Job 38. God asks Job, who shut in the sea with doors? In Jewish thought, as the scholar N.T. Wright points out, the sea was more than water. It was the great symbol of chaos, of everything dark and untamable, and opposed to God's good order. And only one being in the entire universe had authority over it. So when Jesus stands up in that boat and muzzles the sea with a word, he is not performing a magic trick. He is answering a question that every Israelite carried in their bones: who alone stills the seas? And that is why the disciples' reaction in verse 41 is so striking. Mark says, they were filled with great fear. Literally, they feared a great fear, and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And did you catch that? They were more afraid after the storm than during it. The storm could only kill them. But the man in the boat, if he is who this miracle says he is, then everything changes. Every assumption, every plan, every category they had for him just got blown apart. Who then is this, is the question Mark's entire gospel is built to answer, and it's the question this passage puts to you. But before we land there, I want to deal with the sleeping, because this is where most sermons on this passage go wrong. We treat Jesus' sleep as a problem the disciples had to solve. It wasn't. It was a sermon they failed to hear. Martin Lloyd-Jones, in his classic book Spiritual Depression, makes this piercing observation about this very passage. The disciples' real problem was not the storm. It was the conclusion they drew from Jesus' sleep. They looked at his rest and read it as indifference. His silence, they decided, meant his absence. And friend, that is exactly what we do. When God doesn't answer on our timeline, we don't just feel disappointed, we start rewriting his character. He must not see, he must not care. But here's the truth this passage hammers home. Jesus asleep in the stern is not the sleep of neglect. It is the sleep of someone who knows exactly how the story ends. He had already said it back in verse 35. Let us go across to the other side. Not let us go out and see what happens. To the other side. The outcome was never in question. The only question was whether the men in the boat would trust the word he had already spoken. So let me get personal because, that's how we do things here. What's your storm right now? I mean the real one. The one you thought of 30 seconds ago when I mentioned the hospital and the bank statement. Here is what this passage is not promising you. It is not promising that following Jesus means calm seas. Read it again. The storm hit because they obeyed him. They were in the boat at his command. Obedience took them into the storm, not around it. What the passage promises is something better. The storm cannot sink the boat that Jesus is in. And so the question he asks you, verse 40, why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? Notice he doesn't say the storm wasn't real, he doesn't minimize the waves, he asks why the waves got a louder vote than his word, because that's what fear really is. It's when the storm becomes more real to you than the promise. So here's your challenge this week, and I want you to actually do this. Take the thing that's keeping you up at night, name it out loud, and then ask yourself honestly, is my problem the storm, or is my problem my conclusion about the one in my boat? Because his silence is not his absence, his rest is not his neglect. The same voice that muzzled the wind on Galilee holds your life together right now, and he has already told you where this boat is going. The disciples asked, who then is this? 2,000 years later, that is still the question, and it's one every single one of us has to answer, not once, but in every storm. If this opened up the word for you today, subscribe and share it with someone who's in the middle of their own storm right now. It might be exactly what they need to hear. I'm Mark. This is Word with Mark. Open the Word.